Alright, this is 6.5, subtracting mixed numbers by renaming. We kind of did a little bit of this in 6.4 at the end with the borrowing. I call it borrowing up here instead of renaming. So we are on page 316, and least common denominator, again, is the LCM of the denominators. A mixed number, again, is a number with a whole number and a fraction, so those should be pretty familiar to you. So here's your key concept. You need to write this for subtracting, just like adding. Rewrite the fractions using the LCD if necessary. Rename the fractions if necessary. Now that means if the top fraction is smaller than the bottom one, you need to rename it by borrowing from the whole number. Subtract the whole number, subtract the fractions, and simplify if possible. So let's use those steps. And you're supposed to write that down, so make sure you do that. So you write this 2 1/3. Here's where it's important for me to write them on top of each other. And when you see you can't take 1 minus 2, the top fraction has to be bigger. So you come over to the 2, you borrow and make it a 1. Now we are dealing in fractions. So the fractions, we need common denominators. We need to add a whole number to this fraction. Our whole number is 3/3. The reason why it's 3/3 is because we want our fractions to have common denominators. That's equal to 1. That's the one we borrowed. So if you remember in the last lesson, I said you just add the bottom. We're going to add a third, 3/3 to the top. Just add 3. If the bottom's a 5, you add 5. If the bottom's a 6, you add 6. So I add 3, this becomes a 4. Now it's bigger. 4 minus 2 is 2, and the bottom stays a 3, and there's no whole number. Again, they're renaming them just like what we're doing. Same answer. Okay, so here, check out, this one's a little different, and this one is very common for people to miss. A lot of people will just bring the 1/7 down and write it right here. You can't do that. This is like 0 up here. You can't take 1/7 away from nothing, so you have to make a fraction right here. So you borrow from the 5 and make it a 4. Now we're borrowing 1, and we need the bottom to be the same, so we make it a 7, and since it's equal to 1, the top has to be the same. So we put 7/7. Now we can subtract. 7 minus 1 is 6/7, and 4 minus 3 is 1. So 1 and 6/7. So example number 3, solving subtraction problems. The height of a horse is measured from its shoulders as shown in the figure. How much taller is the Clydesdale than the Shetland? So we got 5 1/3 minus 3 3/4. So we get a common denominator of 12, which we've been practicing doing, so you should be getting pretty good at that. Times 4. So I can't take 4 minus 9, so I come over to my 5, borrow and make it a 4, and I add 12 to the 4. I'm adding a whole, a 12/12, so it's just like adding 12 to the 4. 16 minus 9 now is 7, and 4 minus 3 is 1. So it is 1 7/12 feet taller, the Clydesdale. And there's their work. 1 7/12. So let's do some. We got 6, and I'm going to write them on top to recognize whether or not I need to borrow. So I need to borrow because 2 is smaller than 3. Cross out the 6, make a 5. Add your 7 to the top, it becomes a 9. 9 minus 3 is 6/7. 5 minus 4 is 1. 1 6/7. There's the answer. So I'm going to write it again. Okay, they have common denominators, so I can't take 1 minus 3, so I borrow from 3, make it a 2. Now we're dealing in 4, so I add 4 to the top, it becomes a 5. 5 minus 3 is 2/4. 2 minus 1 is 1, and 2/4 reduces to 1 1/2. So there's their, and then they simplified it. So like the one we did with in the example, this one is 3 minus 2.5. You can't take a half away from nothing, so you have to borrow from the 3, make a 2. Now the one we borrowed, the reason why I'm picking a 2 down here is because there's a 2 here. We have to have common denominators, and the top has to be 2 because it's got to be equal to 1. So 2 minus 1 is 1, the 2's stay the same, and 2 minus 2 is 0, so it's just a half. And they're just doing it step by step, just like I'm writing my work, they're showing the work for theirs. So same on this one, 8 minus 5 3/8. We can't subtract 3/8 from nothing, so we cross off the 8, make a 7. This time the bottom is an 8, so the top also has to be an 8. 8 minus 3 is 5, and 7 minus 5 is 2. So 2 and 5/8. So this one, we gotta, before we can decide whether we need to borrow or rename, we have to get common denominators. So the 5 and the 4, the common denominator would be 20. So times 5 times 4 times 4, that's going to be 12. Now look, we can't take 5 minus 12, so we borrow from the 6, make a 5. This time we add 20 to the top. 25 minus 12 is 13/20. 5 minus 2 is 3. And this is just them doing the same thing we're doing. Let's see if it comes. Ooh. 3 and 13, they wrote that number wrong. Look right here. This number right here is supposed to be a 20. So again, common denominators 10 and 2/3 minus 7 and 5/6. Common denominator is going to be 6, so 5/6 times 2 times 2, that's 4. Can't take 5 away from 4. Cross off the 10, make a 9. Add to the top. 10 minus 5 is 5/6. 9 minus 7 is 2. 2 and 5/6. There we go. Number 7, find the difference. Actually, it's suppose an Arabian horse is 4 7/10 feet tall. How much shorter is that than from the Clydesdale from example 3? So the Clydesdale was 5 1/3 minus 4 7/10. Common denominator for 10 and 3. Let's use 30. That's 21. Times 10, that's 10. Can't take 21 away from 10. Borrow, add 30 to 10, it becomes 40. 40 minus 21 is 19. It's 19/30 feet taller. Agree with the LCM, and yeah, we got the same answer. So still, you have to get your common denominators, decide whether or not you can subtract. You can subtract when the top fraction is bigger than the bottom. If not, you need to borrow or rename, as the book says, and then go from there. If you're stuck or have any questions, please ask, and I'll be more than happy to help you. See ya.